Hello, I'm Anthony Asquith. I'm a psychotherapist. I've been working with dental professionals now for perhaps around 15 years. I've worked with many thousands of dental professionals around the UK, and in conjunction with the British Orthodontic Society, I'm going to be giving a talk on managing your head and your thinking in the COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdown is very much a situation for many of us that's new, very unfamiliar, lots of uncertainty. Watching this video, you might be a dental professional already currently having been redeployed to work in a new NHS department or in another hospital or on a different site. You're probably meeting new people, working with new rules and new regulations, perhaps having to get new training. Again, you may also be someone who is currently not working, literally in lockdown, in furlough, perhaps, or on the sidelines, desperate to want to get back into the world, to be actively involved in the work of dentistry. And feelings of frustration, feeling scared, anger and overwhelm are very much natural to human beings right at this point. Lockdown is indeed tragic, it's upsetting, but it is absolutely necessary. Of course, the overwhelm and all those negative feelings come from perhaps we have a sense of no control or indeed no certainty as to when this situation will come to an end. So my work with you today is really to help you come to terms with where your head's at right now. Perhaps a better way of putting this would be turning a current negative to a more positive situation. So in the session today, you're going to be learning, the aims are primarily that it's okay to feel frustrated, to understand why this situation is so mentally difficult, and obviously why it leaves so many people feeling powerless and in trouble. The important point here is that to understand you're not weak, and indeed you're not alone either. You'll also, in the second aim, will be to look at how to quickly change the way you think using cognitive skills to help you retain a perspective, reframe situations, especially when they are extremely stressy. The third objective will be learning to relax deeply, quickly and effectively. I call this going from stress to rest in 10 minutes or less. Finally, the outcome of the module will be looking at how to help you feel calmer for longer, more productive, more effective, and clearer in your thoughts, especially as you learn to adapt to the new normal. But before I get into all the brain science of this topic, I want to just tell you a little short story which I really do feel sums up exactly where we are right now. And the story involves Lucifer, the devil. And one day the devil decides to have a garage sale. And outside of his house, he lays a big table of instruments and tools that he uses to manipulate humans, ranging from anger, sloth, jealousy, fear, resentment. They're all lined up on the table, gleaming in the sun and looking beautiful. And he's very proud of all these tools. Over the hill rides the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You can imagine those big steeds and the grandeur of the power behind them. And one of the horsemen, Contempt, perhaps one of the most insidious of the characters, dismounts from his horse upon arriving at the house and approaches the devil, greets him as an old friend would do, and then spends a few moments just surveying all the different tools that the devil has laid out for purchase. Although, however, his attention is somewhat distracted by a particular tool that lies at the very back of the garage on the shelf there. And it's bent out of shape, it's rusty, it's worn, it's not perhaps the most presentable in comparison to all the brand new tools he has on the table. And yet, strangely enough, it's 4 times more expensive than all the equipment that he has there on the table. So Contempt, naturally curious, says, please just explain to me what it is and why it's so much more expensive. Lucifer smiled with a warm smile, as he would, and simply said, "The reason it's 4 times more expensive than all the other instruments put together is primarily it's the instrument that I wish to sell the least today. It's called discouragement, and I use it every time, and it works 100% guaranteed." And I think this really sums up where we are with the COVID-19 pandemic. Discouragement, it's insidious, it's super contagious, and if we have the press and the politicians all kind of feeding us with this information, it's very easy to see how quickly we become discouraged. So like I said, the aim of the talk is to really help you see what is currently a situation as to where your head's at, struggling, to turn this into a positive thing going forward. So a good starting point is to begin to unravel the way in which you as an individual person are reacting in order to make sense of this. I suppose one could look at it in the way that different people, like you and I, like other people, react in different ways to the same situation. And to get a sense of your responses, the behaviours of other people, and perhaps have a better understanding of what's going on around you, and perhaps within you, is to have an appreciation of what we term your temperament, more loosely referred to as your personality style. Now, I'm a great exponent of a human behaviour system called the DISC model. The DISC model itself is a useful tool to help you look at other people, look at yourself, adapt your behaviours, approaches to situations that occur in and around you. So first of all, what we're going to look at is, what does the DISC model currently look like? The DISC model of human behaviour is made up of 4 styles. There is the dominant personality, who is very outgoing and very task-driven, wants to get stuff done. There's the inspired person. The inspired style is again very outgoing, but wants to do stuff with people and have fun. There's the sensitive personality, who is warm, people-orientated, and quieter, not so outgoing, calmer perhaps. And then there's the cautious personality, who is also likewise slower in pace and is more task orientated around function, form and detail. The 4 personality types will inevitably react in different ways to the current coronavirus lockdown. So if we think about a dominant person, outgoing, task-driven, they're people who are ambitious, they are leaders, they make decisions quickly. I'm even talking to you a little bit like that kind of character at the moment. And so you'd be thinking of people like Alan Sugar, Peter Jones, Donald Trump even. For them, the lockdown is like a trap. It's so stressful. Think about something like a tiger or a lion wandering backwards and forwards, pacing up and down like a wild animal inside a cage, and there's nowhere for them to go. They have to be out there. Their mindset is, how do I get out of this place right now? Because I want to be back out there controlling things, getting stuff done. So lockdown is a nightmare for them. And I'm just thinking about my own next door neighbour as it happens. He's moved in to the house next door to me no more than a month. Already he's painted the outside walls, he's done lots of work in the garden, built a shed, has also done some work indoors, painted in the kitchen, and is also talking about doing a bathroom. He's a builder and painter and decorator. He loves to be busy. What I like most is the fact that the house is what he's renting. It doesn't even belong to him. So dominant people find this particular time very, very difficult. They're out there wanting to get stuff done. Now, the inspired person, as I mentioned, is outgoing and people orientated. For them, again, lockdown is something that is extremely difficult. If you're inspired, you're probably feeling that you may be experiencing slight depression because you get your oxygen in the world from being around people, having fun, interacting. Characters that would remind you of inspired people would include people like Jonathan Ross, Will Smith from Hollywood, these very outgoing, gregarious characters, chatty man, really fun-loving people who want to be around others and have fun. So lockdown for them will not be an easy game. That said, they will, if you like, avoid the stress of this by spending time on FaceTime, on Facebook, on Zoom, perhaps on Teams, talking to friends, talking to colleagues, really sharing their joy, their enthusiasm for life, maybe planning and talking about the parties they've had and the parties they're going to have once the lockdown is complete. So that's the dominant and inspired people. Then you have the sensitive people. Now, even as I talk, you'll notice the way I talk changes. I calm down a little bit, I'm more relaxed. Now, with sensitive people, they like to share time with others. And, you know, the lockdown for them is like heaven. Time has stood still. The world has come almost to a complete stop for them. And that's great because they like a steady pace. They enjoy time with friends and family. So lockdown, where they're able to support the family they live with and take care of other people around them, it's just joyful. It's a pleasure. Although that said, there's a little part of them that will probably feel a little guilty that they shouldn't be having all this lovely experience while everything is going wrong. Then finally, we're looking at the cautious personality type. They're the individuals who are slower paced, but more about function, form and performance. Now, a cautious person doesn't necessarily enjoy social interaction, so would prefer perhaps to spend more time on their own in the quiet of their own home. Their favourite friend would be the tablet or the laptop or some sort of search engine like Google, where they can think about information, they can think about data. They will, of course, be upset at what's gone wrong as much as any of the other personality types, but they will be sitting down quietly thinking about how it went wrong, how we can figure out ways of improving it. They will be looking optimistically towards the latest legislation from the government, the latest news, but with a sense of cynicism, because behind that thought process will be the possibility that it could all happen again. Good God, what's going to go wrong there? So they will be quietly at home studying, reading the books, catching up on information they've been meaning to catch up on, because that's how they get their oxygen. So different character types will respond differently in different ways to the lockdown. And it's not so much that there's anything actually wrong with you or indeed actually right about you. It's just to do with the way you're wired. And as I've said earlier, your temperament will very much dictate the way you behave in the lockdown. As we enter now the 7th week of the UK lockdown, we're obviously starting to hear from the press, politicians, that there is a likelihood of a release from social distancing measures that are currently in operation. And, you know, we're expecting to hear some announcements about this. And obviously it's the emergence of this new normal, a new dawn, as it were, which is really good. But, and that's the thing, there's always this construct in our minds: what if we make a mess of the whole situation? The NHS get overrun by a secondary spike of infections. The economy then falls more, gets worse. And just last week there was a really interesting piece of data on the fact that 87% of people questioned reported that they actually were worried about returning to work in the event that they may themselves become infected by the coronavirus. Back in 2016, I myself wrote a book called Surviving the Human Zoo. Here's a copy. Now, what prompted me to actually write that book was, and this was back 4 years ago, was a piece of evidence from a company called Benenden Healthcare. They are involved in permanent health insurance and accident and sickness coverage for medical professionals as well as other organisations. And Benenden Healthcare reported that on average, the UK adult will worry around 2 to 2.5 hours every day. Not all at once, but just throughout the day, different things, thought processes coming into their minds as they get on with their lives. But think that through in a lifetime. That is 5 years. 5 years worrying. It's crazy. I'm sure you'd agree. But yet it's what we do. We love to spend our time worrying. It's not that we're good or bad or something's, we're not weak-willed or lack of willpower or any of that nature. As humans, we're quite addicted to it. It's what we do really, really well. We're experts at it. And how has this come about? Well, in the past, 20, 25, 30,000 years ago, we had saber-toothed tigers. Rawr! And they would come and out of the jungle and they would rip you apart limb from limb, and you wouldn't have a chance. And of course, it was normal to worry about stuff like that. Of course, saber-toothed tigers no longer exist. And, as human beings, we still have a lot of this wiring, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, within us that predicts that, threats are something we have to pay attention to. And the thing is that I found so interesting is many of the threats that we face on a day-to-day basis, many of them in fact are stuff that we just make up in our own heads that aren't even real. Many of the threats we think about, if they were to actually come to pass and bad things happen to us, a lot of the time the negative events aren't usually as impactful as we might have actually predicted. We sometimes find that sometimes even negative events can turn out to be positive later. So I think it'd be useful to just explore a little bit about why or how our worrisome minds have developed from the origins of that. Also to look at what are our, if you like, basic cognitive needs and how we can get those met in order for us to turn, as I said earlier, a current negative situation into a more positive thought process. I really like this image particularly. It's humorous, but at the same time, it does indicate that there is a much greater link to the human condition than you might initially believe at face value. If we think about our own brain, imagine placing your hand just at the back of your neck and just at the base of your skull, just kind of cupping your hand around the back there. That is what we term our limbic or reptilian brain, which obviously exists over many, 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 many millions of years. And this region of our brain controls areas such as blood pressure, heartbeat, millions of chemical reactions that occur within our cell structures within our body that we're blissfully unaware of. Further up around the mid-range, so if you put your hands, for example, from the back of your neck, touching your ears, both sides, round to your temples, this is the midbrain, referred to as the mammal brain, or I like to refer to it as the monkey brain. Now, if you think about what a monkey likes to think about, there's some basic things it focuses on. The environment around me, is it safe? Could I bring up a family in this environment? Where is my territory? Where is other people's territories? The animals around me,
how friendly or indeed hostile are they? Is one or the two of them coming too close? Do I need to take action? If so, I'm going to start getting aroused and get angry. Is there a threat to my survivability? Is the animal that is approaching me something I can kill, mate with, or even eat? These are fairly primal decision-making processes that are driven by this region of the brain. And then you have, if you put your hand on the front of your forehead and run it all the way back to the back of your skull, this is the human brain, the frontal cortex, very much more later designed in the last 25,000 years. And this negotiates executive functions like rationality, thinking, contemplation, beliefs, human ideals, the sort of the logical side, the executive functions of our brain. But if you think the average chimp that's either in the wild or reasonably kept in an open space in captivity can climb trees really, really quickly. It's muscular, it's energetic, it's a strong beast, and in many cases is as many as 5 times stronger than the average human being. If you think that through in a metaphorical sense, it's easy to understand then how the monkey mind, the mammal brain, can quite quickly muscle out on the human brain, which means that we can become easily subject to emotional arousal, which can possess us and arouse us very quickly. And much of this region is driven by a gland in the brain called the amygdala. It's an almond-shaped gland, and its position is set back behind our eyes because it tracks information coming in and assesses its threat levels or its emotional content, and then stores that information. In addition, also gives it, if you like, tags, patterns to consider whether these things are threats or things that can please us, and quite quickly starts to store up a data bank of information that it reacts to very, very quickly. These are what we term pattern matchers. And we quickly make decisions around things in the modern day about situations and events. Are they people we deal with friendly? We're faced with environments now where life is often so very busy. It's difficult to kind of interact with people. So we quite quickly make decisions about people early doors. And that's not a logical decision process. It's driven by the monkey mind. And it looks for cues, social interactions that tell us whether we are going to get on with these people, even before they've really started to get to know us well. And when I talk about pattern matches, these can be very positive or indeed negative. If you take as a dental professional your own day list, and you may choose nowadays not to look down it, but if you did, it's not difficult to realise that there may be a list that comes in the particular day, and you look down and you see a patient that you enjoy spending time with, talking to, and you probably find yourself, even though the patient hasn't arrived there yet, thinking about that, looking forward to his interaction with you or their interaction. Conversely, you might find that also you might look at that day list and quite quickly spot a name in that list and think, oh God, that guy or that girl, last time they were here, they gave aggravation to the staff members. They were difficult to deal with, very nervous, very anxious. And even before you've started to get started on your day, having looked at the day list, having seen that individual who is posing a threat now, because your brain's already pattern matching, the limbic and mammal brain, the chimp brain, are already pattern matching to the danger that's ahead of you. And have you ever noticed that when that starts to happen, either you or indeed your colleagues can become quite angsty in situations, and the way you treat patients is often very much different. So these regions of the brain are useful but have purposes that sometimes can be a little bit problematical in the present climate. So I want to explore with you, having looked at that, what are the needs of human beings that allow us to function really successfully? How can they better be? How can you best meet them in order to, what I like to use the phrase, exercise your chimp? So whilst it is aroused, you can do things with it to calm it down, keep it under control. And any part of life in today's society is to do with the ability that you have to balance out the thinking of the human brain and the monkey brain successfully. So that when you're dealing with COVID-19 and the lockdown, you're trying to make sense of it all, but having, if you like, a balanced thought process, as opposed to a complete overreaction, becoming very excitable, very aroused, very distressed, as a monkey might do quite quickly. And as that happens, the limbic regions and the amygdala will fire off all sorts of responses that will automatically begin to overtake the successful functioning of the human brain. So let's get a look at that and see how we can take that further with you.
In order to exercise the mental chimp, as it were, and engage in a more balanced style of thinking, it's useful, helpful even, to understand the mindset of optimism and pessimism. The leading eminent specialist in this is a gentleman called Martin Seligman. He's a professor at Pennsylvania University. And Seligman is renowned for his insightful work in this particular field. How we talk to ourselves about events, the situations we face in our lives, and the way we describe these events and the meanings we give to them invariably will affect the way we react. And as you well know, the only thing often in uncontrollable situations that we can control is our own mental response and our own behaviours. So it's all about what we tell ourselves. And he referred to this as our explanatory style, the words we use to make sense of the world. And indeed, the world in which we live in is based upon the words we use on ourselves and the meanings we give to situations. So he explored the idea that, do people, for instance, see some events in black and white, either good or bad? And are there other people who see the world in shades of grey? And through his work, he discovered simply that people with a capacity to kind of lie between the two, either nothing's bad or nothing's good, but somewhere in the middle, have a better ability to manage things like uncertainty, situations where you have no control, situations where it all seems unreasonable, unfair, very, very difficult, something that you feel unable to do anything about. And people who see things in the more extremes of good or bad were often, in his work, considered to be subject to either extreme helplessness or extreme optimism, which both can lead to significant problems. So his work looks at, as I said, how we talk to ourselves about things, and he introduces us to what's called the 3 Ps. So when an event occurs, it's a lot to do with how we talk to ourselves. And the 3 Ps are personalization, permanence, and pervasiveness. So personalization is how we attribute the events to ourselves. Do we bring them towards us, or do we see them as away from? Equally, permanence, again, how long will this affect us for, or will it only affect us for a short time? And pervasiveness, what areas of my life will this affect, and how long will this take, or will it be a fairly short time thing? And what he noticed was positive thinkers, when good things happen, will attribute the 3Ps towards themselves. So, for example, something as successful as passing a driving test. A positive thinker will think to themselves, hey, I'm good at driving tests. I'm good at tests per se. I'm looking forward now to getting out there on the road and living my life. So what you're talking about there is the 3Ps. It's affecting all my life. I'm good at things, and it's permanent, and it's who I am to be good at passing driving tests. Conversely, if you're someone of a negative thinker and an event like a driving test were to occur where you passed, you would actually attribute those Ps away from yourself. So in terms of personalisation, you might say to yourself, do you know, I was lucky that time. He didn't ask me about the highway code, and God, if I'd had to do the emergency stop further down the road, it'd have been a disaster. Permanence, well, you might be thinking, well, now I've got to go out and buy a car, and then, God, it'll probably break down, and if it breaks down, it'll cost money, and there's 38 million other cars on the road, and you know, you attribute away from yourself the success. So that's the mindset of a negative thinker. On the other hand, if you look at an event that is perceived as being negative, like failing a driving test, a positive, optimistic person would use the 3Ps to attribute away from themselves. So, for example, in terms of personalisation, a positive person might say to themselves, that driving test instructor, what an idiot. He should have seen me miles away. I'm a brilliant driver. Oh, numpty. Besides, and then he'll talk about pervasiveness. It's not going to affect. I'll get back on it. I'll get back on the horse. I'll start driving again. I'll practice more on highway code. I'll get good at emergency stops. And soon, probably the next month, when I could put in for a cancellation, I'll pass that damn driving test. I know I should have done the first time. So the 3Ps will be away from. It's not about them failing. It's other factors. If, however, you're a negative thinker, you're more likely to look at the failure of a driving test and apply the 3Ps towards you. Oh my God, what was I thinking even starting to consider taking that driving test? Numpty. I take exams and they never really work, and if I do pass the test, it's going to be a nightmare, not that I ever will, and I'll probably end up not getting that job I was applying for because I need to have a car. And so they tend to attribute stuff away from themselves. And as I said, it's more to do with the way you talk to yourself and the way in which this makes you then feel, linked to your, if you like, your endocrine system, the cortisol, the noradrenaline, the stress responses, which then affect you longer term. As I said, fight or flight responses are very helpful to get away from the saber-toothed tiger. However, they no longer exist. So we've got to worry about other stuff, and part of managing the chimp is about the idea of being able to strike a balance, not necessarily always believing things that happen in black and white terms, but somewhere more between the two. So Seligman, in his work, came up with a really, really simple system. It's called the ABCDE model, and I'm going to describe this to you now. Let's imagine an event that takes place. So if we take the A part of this ABCDE model, this would be the adversity. Imagine one day that a normally good patient, regular, complains to you rather abruptly that she's upset at the way you spoke to her daughter, and she's going to complain to the higher authorities about your conduct. So that's the adversity. The belief might be, oh, what have I done this time? These ungrateful people, the B part of the model. How could they speak to me this way? Have they no idea how much effort I have to put into all of this? The C is, the feeling it produces. Oh, it's a bloody nightmare. I'm disappointed, angry, I'm sad, upset, and furious about the whole thing. The stress of going to the General Dental Council, what a nightmare it's all going to be. Now, what many people with, if you like, more negative explanatory styles might do is go round and round the loop, the ABC model, where they will continually replay the video in their mind of the mother speaking to them in an abrupt way, hearing the words, kind of reliving the emotions, reliving the feelings, and, if you like, building up on the beliefs about themselves, and maybe adding to them more negative thinking about their ability to communicate well, and, you know, maybe they weren't cut out to be a dentist, all this sort of stuff. And that's kind of like believing the thinking process of a chimp. Would you trust it? Would it be good? Would it be useful to trust that kind of thinking system? Nah, probably not. But that's what most people, interestingly, do. And they go round and round and round for hours on end, building up bigger and bigger and bigger events, until finally kind of their brain kind of goes, oh, I'm tired out of all of this, and they kind of calm down. But it takes forever. Hours, maybe sometimes even days. You think about how that will affect your central nervous system, especially if you do this habitually 4 or 5 times a day. You're going to be dead soon. So you've got to be able to explore past that. So instead of believing the thinking process of a wild chimp that's out of control, you have to question the style, the way you're thinking. So if we go back, we play the process again. A normally regular patient comes to you and complains that you've been abrupt or you've spoken in a disrespectful way to her daughter, and she's going to take this to the higher authorities. Now, the belief might be, you know, what have I done this time? What have I made? What's happened has gone wrong? These ungrateful people. And then you'd be thinking to yourself, oh, this is a flipping nightmare. You know, I work so hard. I don't need to go to the GDC. It's stressful enough. Oh, this disruption, it'll be awful for my practice. Now, then you have to move to the next stage, the disputation. Rather like a barrister would question a defence witness in great detail to try to eke out the facts, the real evidence, you might have to stop and think to yourself, okay, well, this woman, she's normally a very good patient. She's never complained before. And if I think about it, the vast majority of my patients on this patient list that I have, that I've had for a number of years, they're generally happy to come and see me. They appreciate my work. A few of them even recommend me to their friends. Can't be that bad as a dentist, can I? And even if she did go further, and even if she did complain to the General Dental Council, so these are all disputations of your thinking, the chimp's thinking. Even if she did complain to the General Dental Council, my record's good. I've kept up to date with my legislative learning. I'm fairly efficient on my competencies, and, you know, I'd be able to provide good insight into my reflective abilities around this complaint. The E bit will be the energizer. What can I learn from this experience? What can I do to make myself engage more to avoid this sort of thing happening again? You might think the most immediate thing is I better phone my defence body, because, you know, they obviously get involved in these types of things on a regular basis, and they'll be able to tell me what I need to do next. What kind of letter might I write in order maybe to settle the issue quickly, and I can maybe move on. But what I will learn is that, you know, I'll be more careful going forward in terms of how I deal with communication with patients, especially around money. So what this experience has taught the thinker is that it's not helpful to go round and round and round the loop till exhaustion, because it's frankly tiring, it's exhausting, not only stressful, it kills you slowly. You have to be able to kind of short circuit the thinking of this chimp. So recently I was speaking to a foundation dentist, and having presented this idea to the group, she came up with an interesting example of it, because she was working in triage to dental patients calling into the practice to make inquiries. Young lady, very pleasant and, you know, interesting character within the group. And she explained that the patient had really volleyed into her about the fact that A, he couldn't get an appointment quickly enough. He felt that he was in pain, and he paid his taxes, and it was all very unfair. And of course, when I asked her about this, she felt powerless to do anything. She tried to explain it to him, why it was all happening, and was positively deflated by the experience, so much so that clearly it had been living with her for a couple of days, because she brought it to me at a later event in the postgraduate meeting. So I then had to suggest to her, well, have a think about how you might dispute this situation. And calmly, she talked to me and the group about this. She explained that, I'm new as a dentist. The world is changing dramatically around me. The availability of dental treatment has changed completely. No longer can people go in and be seen instantly. They have to be referred to and make appointments to go to emergency dental care centres, and I'm here doing the very, very best I can. I then simply said to her, how does that make you feel? And she went, it's not such a big deal now. Now, isn't it interesting how nothing at all had changed? He'd had a go at her. She'd been upset. He was still angry. And primarily she had, as it were, held all of this for a few days. Then she'd thought differently, questioned her thinking. So I said to her, what might you do different in the future? What's the energizer for you from this? She said, perspective. Now, isn't that interesting? For days she'd been overwhelmed, running around, continually going ABC, ABC, adversity, belief, consequence, wearing herself down, creating a whole range of other beliefs about herself. And then in an instant, because she'd learned to dispute the thinking of the chimp, it transformed the way she was looking at the situation. And you could see the rest of the group just nodding gently. So fundamentally, nothing has changed except her decisions except her decisions and the meaning she's applied to that one event. So I would actively challenge you to go out and find times for things to go wrong, or even think about times when things have gone wrong. So for example, if we look at the current COVID event, an activating event, the world has closed down, everything's gone to a grinding stop. There's many of us in furlough, many of us finding that we're not doing the jobs we ought to, and some of us are just stuck in lockdown. The belief that the world has come to an end, it's debilitating, it's frustrating, it's an interruption, and I can't do anything about it. How horrible this all is. Now, the next point is to then think about disputation. Remember, tough times don't last, tough people do. Yeah? So think about this. The disputation of all of this now is, first of all, that the world outside of England is moving forward. Already we've started to see certain parts of the world unlocking and returning in a phased way to normality, or the new normal. The government are likely to make some announcements over the next forthcoming weeks, which may well see parts of both the healthcare services, schools, other parts of industry taking steps to, in a phased manner, open up. Obviously, what you can learn from this, the disputation, is also that the hospitals have much greater capacity than we thought possible. The structure of the NHS system for COVID has changed, and the ability to test, trace and isolate is improving day in, day out. It may be that, with appropriate social distancing, the possibility of risk of a second spike, although very real, could be greatly reduced than you may, or the authorities may anticipate. And so what would you learn from this experience? Well, first of all, you aren't trapped in this forever. Things will improve, things will change, you will adapt. Most humans, it's what we do naturally. Hopefully, by just listening in and thinking about this, take a few minutes to write down the little list of A, B, C, D, E, the adversity, the belief, the consequence, how you can dispute this, how you can think differently, the questions you might ask to challenge the way you're thinking, and how you could learn from this experience. Because all those profound points are what changes the way you think cognitively. And it's not something you can do just in an instant. It's something you learn. And it's definitely something I've gotten very good at. If you're really fascinated, and it is an extraordinary area to consider, here's the particular book which I picked up at least 12, 13 years ago, and it has saved me a great deal of woe and distress over the years. Learned Optimism by Martin E.P. Seligman. Absolute gem of a book if you're interested in changing the way you think, if you're interested in learning how to avoid falling into the pit of despair of what I term learned helplessness, which, as you look around you, you'll see many people are experiencing. It was similar when we had Brexit. Anytime events occur that pretty much in any walk of life, whether it's coronavirus, whether it's Brexit, or just disappointments in everyday life, having this kind of knowledge to be able to look at an event, think of it differently, not ruminate over it in an unhelpful way, but be able to stop and actively ask yourself questions. It's like anything. If you do exercise, anything of that nature, it's bound to improve the way quickly you can respond to situations and much more effectively. So now, as we enter into the last section of this module, just to recap, we've looked at how to change the way you think. We've also explored why it is you feel this way in the current lockdown and how that relates to the chimp mind and the human mind working together. And the third aim was to teach you how to go from stressed to rest in 10 minutes or less. So what I'd like you to do is to just take a few moments to put any pens or papers down, switch off any other distractions apart from me, you and your laptop or your iPad or your tablet or your phone, whatever you're looking at. Find a place just to sit quietly in a relaxed position, either lying down or sitting up, hands on your lap, thumbs not touching. And wherever you are, it doesn't matter necessarily, even if it's a busy place, you can just sit quietly, listening to my voice and the sound of my voice. And I'm going to take you through a simple mental exercise that will, as I say, help you go from a state of stressy to rest in 10 minutes or less. And the way you can start this, well, there's two ways, but you can simply begin to, first of all, control your breathing. So breathing in through the nose on the count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out through your mouth, counting down from 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out through the mouth, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out through the mouth, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now just take a moment to focus on a spot in the distance in front of you. You could be sitting at home, might be an item of furniture, could be a image, picture up on the wall or somewhere in front of you, could be just looking at the floor. And you may be out and about. You could just choose to look at a tree, look at your steering wheel if you're sitting listening to this in the car, and just gaze at that spot. You're breathing steadily and comfortably. That's right. And then begin to make yourself aware as you look at that spot. Allow yourself, the muscles behind your eyes, just to relax. So as you're now looking at the spot, the image becomes slightly soft focused. Just like that. That's it. And as it becomes soft focused, you can begin to expand your peripheral vision. So you're looking at the same spot, but now you're more aware of other things around that spot. And you can expand that peripheral vision wider and wider to the point that it's actually fully horizontal, vertical. You can pretty much see 180 degrees right round you. Maybe even further back than that. You just look at that one spot. And as you do, just notice the way in which even your mind slowly starts to slow down. That's right. Now, looking at this spot, I'd like you to begin to just, without moving your eyes, think about 3 things that you can see in your peripheral vision. So it might be other objects, might be other people, trees, sky, colours, pictures, furniture, whatever it is. 3 things that you can see, and tell yourself what those 3 things are. I can see X, Y, or Z. You might notice a chair, you might notice a tree, clouds, you might notice a painting on the wall, a picture, an item of furniture, an object next to you, your hands, anything, 3 things you can see. When you've made a mental quiet note in your mind of those 3 things, just simply close your eyes and say the word relax. And now, with your eyes closed, switch your attention internally, inside yourself, to 3 things that you can feel. Maybe you're noticing your breathing, heaviness in your hands, your limbs, shoulders, arms, muscles in your face perhaps relaxing. Maybe you can notice the temperature of the room around you, the calmness of your mind, whatever it might be, the 3 things that you can feel right now as you relax a little more deeply. That's it. That's how you do it. And as you drift, you can switch your attention again now to 3 things you can hear. The sound of my voice, your own breathing, the world outside. Any 3 things that you can hear, that you're aware of, tell yourself what those 3 things are, and just simply say the word relax. That's right. As you relax even more comfortably now, just briefly, for a moment or 2, looking at the same spot, just open your eyes, looking at that same spot. That's it. Soft focus the muscles behind your eyes. Good. Having done so, you can think about 3 things that you can see. Again, could be the same 3 things you noticed earlier, or 3 different things. Tell yourself quietly in your mind what those 3 things are. Having done so, close your eyes and simply say the word relax to yourself quietly in your mind. Good. And now switching your attention inwards to your breathing and the feelings in your body, and the feelings you can feel. Arms, shoulders heavier, muscles more relaxed, more comfortable. Breathing steady, digestion almost unnoticeable as it goes on in the background. Any 3 things you can feel: heaviness in the limbs, the eyelids, shoulders, muscles in the face. And just simply tell yourself what they are, and simply say the word relax to yourself, deeply and comfortably. That's it. Good. And now switching your attention to 3 things you can hear. Maybe you're paying attention to the sound of my voice, which travels with you. Maybe you're paying attention to the world and the noises outside of you. It's nice to notice the world outside is busy while you're busy too inside. Maybe you can notice your breathing, the sound of the clock ticking or other objects and noises, distractions. Paying attention to them. Tell yourself the 3 things you can hear. Tell yourself what they are. And simply say the word relax. That's right. As you relax deeply now, with your eyes closed, I'd like you to think about 3 things in your mental mind as you create a picture of the image you were looking at just now. Make it bright, make it bold, pick the spot that you were looking at, and using the searchlights of your mind, create the mental image of that image, the spot you were just looking at now, and all the peripheral detail, the furniture, the shapes, the colours, the sounds, all there for you. Make them bright, colourful, observable. Fill in all the details, shading, colours and the contexts, the textures of the objects. And that's it. Tell yourself what those 3 things are. Having made a mental note of those 3 things, just simply say the word relax deeply to yourself. That's nice. As you become more and more relaxed now, drifting inside your own body, thinking about how comfortable your body feels, how you feel, calm, relaxed and comfortable, safe right now. Think about 3 things you can feel either in your body, breathing, heaviness of muscles in the arms, shoulders, legs, calmness in the mind. That's it. Really relaxing, really easily and comfortably. That's it. And now think about 3 things you can hear. Maybe the sound of my voice, sound of the world around you, sound of your own breathing. Any 3 things you can feel and hear. Tell yourself what those 3 things are. Having done so, just simply relax and remind yourself to relax deeply now. And as you relax, there calmly and comfortably, you could just take a moment to think about all the issues that are going on in your world right now. Have them come to your mind, all the challenges you're facing. Just allow them to be there. Acknowledge the feelings that come up from those for yourself now. Have a sense of an awareness of wanting to do something about them. Have a sense of awareness of wanting to change those situations. How the feelings are about wanting to enact on it and get stuff done with it. Have all those feelings, just being aware of them and just allow them to be there with you. And then switching your attention to the fact that any of those issues or anything personal about you or toward you, something you have to do something to make better, just allow those feelings to be there. Has anything to do with you or is about you, and just allow them to be with you there. That's it. And as you relax with those feelings, as you relax with those issues, just noticing how calm this makes you feel, how comfortable you feel, being relaxed with all those issues, being rested and calm, not needing to rush, not needing to do stuff, not really needing to be aware of actually having an association to those things. They are not you and you are not them. And you can just allow those feelings and those awarenesses to be there. And as you do, just allowing those awarenesses and those feelings to be there, notice how calm this is for you. And you can just carry this sense of deep, restful calm long into the day, long after this time of rest here today. Taking it with you to build fortitude. You can learn from the insights of the video. Taking time to exercise your chimp, regain a balance of thinking. Taking time to question the hype that the chimp comes up with. Taking the time to reevaluate the new you, the new future, the new normal. As you are normal, and you will adapt, and you will grow, and you will create, and you will develop. And you'll do this easily, comfortably, and in a relaxed and intense way. And you can find yourself just aware of the presence of the world around you. Breathing comfortably and easily. And soon you'll be able to return back to a awake state. Calm, relaxed. On the count of 5, I'll draw you back. You can feel wide awake and stretch off. Come back to the world. 1. Noticing your body, becoming more aware of your feelings in your arms and your legs. 2. Being aware of your presence in the room or in the place you were sitting. Limbs, movement in the limbs starting to come back. An awareness of your current time in the moment now. 3. Just moving your head, noticing your eyelids relaxing and opening up. 4. That's it. And have a good stretch. Posture, just shift around in the chair. Just notice how you feel right now. And 5. And how comfortable and refreshed and at ease you are. That's it. So thank you for taking this time to spend time with me on behalf of the British Orthodontic Society and taking time to consider your position during the COVID-19 crisis and, more importantly, how you've learned consciously and indeed unconsciously how to create new frames of reference, new ideas around how to change the way you think about the COVID-19 crisis. And I will certainly look forward to hearing any stories or ideas that you come up with going forward in the future. Thank you very much for your time. Hope you've enjoyed listening, and I wish you all the very best of success. Goodbye.